Good morning, AP World students. Congratulations for patching into the Screencast. I'm getting it done Saturday morning as promised, and I hope you are enjoying the weekend. It's just incredible weather, just fantastic. I've already played 9 holes of golf. It's 11 a.m. I'm at my cabin. Just could not be a nicer day. I'm just going to say that I had a few good holes. There's a lot left to improve for next summer. But here we go. We're talking about Rome and religion today. And we just have a few slides. It shouldn't take very long. Make sure you get your notes down in your notebook, but also make sure you read your textbook, of course. I'm sure that's handy by your bedside as always. All right, we're going to start with then the early religion, and then we'll move to religions of salvation. So, in the early Roman Republic, and even with the Etruscans, not surprisingly, like most of the societies that we've studied so far, they were polytheistic. And the Romans, as we know, borrowed many of the Greek gods, and that's why it's sometimes confusing whether you're talking about Roman gods or Greek gods. Another philosophy that we talked about at the end of our Greece notes last week was Stoicism. And Stoicism was the most prominent school of moral philosophy in Rome in the early days. And this was adopted by Cicero, and it was where basically everybody has a duty to, operate under good moral behavior. And again, you've got Rome in the middle of this incredible trade boom, and you've got a lot of people making a lot of money, and you've got a lot of people getting very poor in the process, so that rich and poor divide, is making some people a little uncomfortable in the excesses that go along with such great wealth. All right, well, the whole philosophy behind the religions of salvation, which come later on, has to do with the fact that this growing poverty and economic disparity is not applying to everybody. And some people are wondering what the deal is here. And so religions of salvation all spring up because they offer salvation to those who have less. So there are a couple that your book mentions that we want to mention too. One is Mithraism. It's very popular with the armed forces. Mithras was actually a Persian god, and they sort of adopted it in Rome to be a little bit different. And this was a men's-only religion, believe it or not. Talk about a patriarchal society. And the virtues, though, that they adopted were strength and courage and discipline, which would explain why it was so popular with the Roman soldiers. Again, the end product is if you behave in a proper way, you too can reach salvation. Now, there was also the cult of Isis, and this was sort of the counterpart. This was attractive to women, and Isis was presumably a goddess that was looking over people as they, conducted their day-to-day lives. And women were especially, because she was a goddess, maybe, who knows, but women were especially attracted to the cult of Isis. And then finally, the Grand Hurrah, the emergence of Christianity. This is going to occur in 4 BCE. And Jesus of Nazareth, who was really a person, is born, and he will become the main player throughout his life in the early 1st century CE. And Christianity will have a profound effect not only on Rome eventually, but on, of course, the whole Western Europe and Western world. So all of these religions spring up because they provide hope and salvation for those who have less. So let's keep going. All right, little commercial here before we get to Judaism, or before we get to Christianity, that is. What was happening with the Jews during all of this time? Last we checked in, the new Babylonians destroyed the temples, and everybody, went into exile because it was a very, very scary place to be in Palestine at that time. After the new Babylonians, remember, Cyrus basically sent out a directive to the Jews saying, you know what, Jews? You guys need to go back to your homeland of Jerusalem. You need to feel free to set up, your new temple and worship the way you had before. So all these Jews, about 40,000 of them, flocked back to Jerusalem. And Darius continued that directive and actually put it into place. During the Seleucids, they were pretty much left alone. However, when the Romans came on the scene, and as they were expanding their empire, this is after the fall of the Republic and after Julius Caesar, you've got the Romans really wanting the Jews to worship the emperors as gods. And of course, this is never going to work because Judaism, like Christianity, is a monotheistic religion. So both the Jews and the Christians in the early first century want nothing to do with worshiping Roman emperors as gods. And these Roman emperors, and we didn't talk too much about that yesterday, but if you really, if we had more time, we would look into these Roman empires. I mean, look at Caesar. Julius Caesar, he absolutely he wanted a ton of power. Augustus was the same way. And all of the emperors thereafter were sole dictators, and they got to the point where they really wanted, they went to their heads. The people themselves, weren't sure where their power ended. So huge egos in wanting the average Roman to be worshiping them. Well, all of this is going to come to a head in the Jewish War, 66 to 70 CE. This is when Romans will fight Jews, and the Romans, of course, are going to crush the Jewish rebels. There's really no contest. There's no way they can fight the formidable Roman army. So the Jews are crushed yet again and have to come under the rule of the Romans. So they really have no choice. All right, let's go to Christianity and the rise of Christianity. Jesus of Nazareth is becoming this guy who everybody's talking about, who's apparently performing miracles and is able to heal the sick. Well, all of a sudden, the Roman emperors get wind of what's going on with this guy, and they want to know who he is, because people are flocking, hither, thither, and yon, and trying to figure out what is this guy capable of doing. And he's offering salvation to all, and he's talking about being the king or son of God, and he's talking about being the king of kings, and his disciples are talking about what a unbelievable person this is. Well, the Jewish or the Roman emperors, become very, very concerned, if not jealous of his popularity, so they had him crucified. Jesus was crucified, hung on a cross, which was a very common way to put someone to death back in that time period. This happened in the early 30s CE. But of course, what happens when you take somebody that is kind of hero status and you either assassinate or, in this case, crucify Jesus? This is going to have what effect, would you guess? Well, if you guessed that that's going to make people bond even closer together and become even more committed to the faith, then you are absolutely right. Because after the 30s CE, and also thanks to the disciple Paul of Tarsus, Christianity is going to spread like wildfire. But the Romans are going to work really, really hard to try to keep it at bay. Now, just a word about their sacred text. All of the writings about Christianity that we know are included in the New Testament of the Holy Bible, which is the Christian's sacred text. The Old Testament of the Bible is the Jewish Hebrew scriptures. So together, New and Old Testament forms the Christian Bible. The Old Testament, the Jews recognize as well, but not the New Testament, because they believe that Jesus was a prophet, but they do not believe that he was the Son of God and came back and rose back up to heaven and all those things. So just to be clear on that. All right, well, this new religion called Christianity, which was really evolving after Jesus died thanks to his disciples and followers, it called for really high moral standards and faith. It actually had to come before personal or family interests, with the promise of salvation for those who followed the faith. And this guy named Paul of Tarsus, who was from Anatolia originally, he was the main figure in the expansion of Christianity. Now, poor Paul, he was fearless, and he was spreading the good word of Christianity, but he too will meet an untimely demise, because he was put to death for his Christian views and so forth. And, once he got to Rome, that was just not tolerated. So the Romans, very threatened by this Christianity, the emperors thinking that they were godlike and that people should be directing all of their attention to the Roman emperors, while in fact they were adopting different religions of salvation. So they tried very, very hard to nip it in the bud and get rid of it, but it was not to be. It spread really quickly. And one of the main reasons is because it was so incredibly attractive to the lower classes and women. Monday, when you come to school, we're going to be talking about the Beatitudes, which is found in one of the Gospels of the New Testament, which basically says, blessed are those who have less, not more. And so that was really appealing to the vast majority of Romans who didn't have the kind of wherewithal that the aristocrats, the former patrician class had. Women also had a lot of opportunity in Christianity that they had never had before. All right, well, persecution. Christians are defiant. They refuse to worship the Roman gods, just like the Jews. They put up a good fight, but thousands of Christians will be crucified, burned, or killed by wild animals in the circus arenas. Gladiator, that movie that some of you are familiar with, a lot of Christians became victims because of gladiator fights. And of course, over here, we can see the Colosseum, or the remains thereof. This was a place that could hold 50,000 people, it turns out. This would be like, Target Stadium. I think it holds about 50,000 people. Maybe it holds more. But in any event, try to get a visual of that. That's a lot of people that are coming to watch basically Christians or other undesirables be killed. So that's what they did. Here's the inside look at the Colosseum. Pretty interesting stuff. I think you can even go down now in the Colosseum. You can go down in the ruins and so forth and see where they were housed down below on the lower level. All right, well, that is it. The Christians, as we know, they will somehow survive all the Roman persecutions, and we will pick up with this at a later date. But thank you for tuning into the Screencast. Hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.